Greetings and salutations. Tonight I'm going to bring you a great subscriber encounter story. I've been waiting for this story for months, and it finally arrived in my email box the other day. And let me tell you, I was ecstatic to read it, and now I'm ecstatic to record it. I want you guys to, with respect to the subscriber, give me your opinion on what this person encountered. I have my own opinions. I'd like to know what you guys think. And with that, let's get on with the encounter, shall we? About cryptid-type creatures. Sometimes we just have a feeling that something is around us, even before we ever know what it could be. I grew up in Green Valley, the one in Northern California. Our house was less than 200 feet from Green Valley Fault. The homes were built around a golf course and country club. The construction was also built on an Indian burial ground. I remember when they were doing construction on a new subdivision on the south side, they had to halt construction because they dug up Indian graves. The local historical society had to remove things before they could continue the construction. When I was 9 years old, I saw a ghost, I think. It was about 7 feet tall, and it was walking across the bridge over the creek where I was rescuing pollywogs from the almost dried up creek. Something I did every year, and I have a strange and wonderful story about 1 year when I was doing this. The pollywog story. I was 7 or 8 years old. I was in the almost dried up creek on the other side of the bridge. I was trying to rescue the pollywogs from the almost dried up pockets of water in the creek bed, but I was doing more harm than good. There was so little water, therefore the sand kept caving in around the pollywogs. I finally knew that the situation was hopeless. I stood up, crying, and with my eyes closed, I said out loud, "Oh God, please help me." Right after that, I felt water flowing around my feet and my ankles, and it was working its way up my legs. I opened my eyes to absolute astonishment. There was water all around me. The creek had a flowing stream of water. The pollywogs were free and all swimming or floating downstream. They were going to get to the section of creek that is fed by a spring year-round and grow up to be frogs. I scrambled out of the water and ran home. I was yelling over and over again, "It's a miracle! It's a miracle!" My grandmother was taking care of us, so my parents must have been out of town or something. I remember my older brother saying they just let water out of the dam. The dam was at the north end of the valley, miles away in the direction of the mountain Twin Sisters. No one could convince me that it was not a miracle. The timing was perfect. Sorry, I got sidetracked. Now, back to the ghost. It was dark. A figure was about 7 feet tall and walking across the bridge over the creek where I was rescuing the pollywogs with help from my friend. The tall figure was very thin, all white and glowing. We were curious to see who this could be. I can still picture it in my head. We ran as fast as we could up the bank of the creek and up the dirt road to the paved road. All this time I was looking at the tall figure while it was crossing the bridge, and now it was walking on the paved road. We were all heading in the same direction, and just for a moment, the leaves on a low-hanging branch of the tree blocked my view of the figure. We got to the road, and it was gone. It didn't have time to get anywhere away from the road. We were scared, and we ran to my house. My friend was too frightened to walk back that way to cut across the golf course to her house, so my mother drove her around the side of the golf course to her house. I don't remember going with them. I think I was too afraid to go outside for the rest of the night. Our house was by the 6th green of the golf course, so I played a lot of golf in the early morning, late afternoon, and into the evening before dark. I was usually the only one on the golf course at that time. Hills and wooded areas were around one side of the golf course. I remember always being afraid to go around any of those areas, and when I did, I was always looking over my shoulder, walking fast, and with a golf club in one hand. I never knew what I was afraid of. I just had that feeling that I was being watched. About 20 years later, my father bought a walnut ranch about in the middle of California. It was there where I was attacked twice by someone or something who grabbed my lower leg both times with something that felt like a clamp. I kept wondering what that clamp was. I mean, who carries a clamp around with them, ready to attack someone with it in the middle of the night and on someone else's property? Whoever it was also had to have jumped a 6-foot fence and gotten into that area. About the first attack, I was at the ranch by myself. My parents spent half of every month on their other house on the lake of Northern California near the Oregon border. I was never afraid of being there alone because I had a lot of dogs that I rescued, mostly from small pounds around schools where I worked as a speech and language pathologist. However, I did not have a very protective 120-pound 13-year-old Rhodesian Ridgeback Doberman Pinscher mix, Wolfgang, because he had died a few months before this time. It was very late, possibly around midnight. I heard all the dogs barking out back in the kennel area. They never barked unless something was wrong or unless someone or another animal was around. There were new floodlights that I could plug in inside a small building to see what was going on in the kennel area or in the orchard behind the kennel area. I walked out there and into the small building to plug on the floodlights. I heard something behind me and behind the wall to my right. I froze. Then my lower leg was grabbed with something that felt like a clamp. I still couldn't move. I have never been able to remember what I heard, but whatever it was, I do remember feeling that if I did not use every ounce of strength that I had into being able to move and get away, that I was going to be killed. Finally, I could move. I threw my arms up into the air, screamed, and yelled, "No!" Then, with my other leg, I began kicking and kicking and kicking until the clamp let go of my leg. I never saw what had a hold of my leg. It was behind me to the right, where the doorway opened into a small room in the small building, and low, possibly on the ground. As soon as the clamp was released from my leg, I turned around and ran as fast as I could to the house, which was about 70 yards away. I got into the house, locked the door, and then I ran all around the inside of the house and locked all the doors. I walked back out into the family room, catching my breath and still trying to figure out what had just happened. I turned the floodlights on and lit up the back blacktop area between the house and the kennel area. I stood there looking out the window in my back door. My father had covered all the windows in the family room with acrylic plastic because my dog Wolfgang, who had previous died, used to jump at the windows, breaking them if a stranger was outside the house. Therefore, I didn't worry about anyone trying to break in by breaking the windows. For some reason, I stepped outside of the back door, closed the door behind me, and looked out towards the back, thinking, what just happened here? Then my eyes got big and my jaw dropped. With the startling realization, I just locked myself out of the house, Quickly, I said to myself, "Where are my keys?" "They're in my van." "Where's my van?" "It's out there." It's parked near the area where I just ran from. With the blacktop area still lit up from the floodlights being on, I quickly ran out to my van, got in, locked the doors, and started the engine, and felt empowered. I thought, "Okay, where are you? Come on out. I will plow right into you with my van." I thought all of that to myself as I went forward and backwards in my van several times. I was daring whoever that was to come out, and I was ready to run him down. That gives you an idea of how much adrenaline I had going through my system at the time. Then I backed the van up close to the house as possible, got out, locked it, and ran to the door, quickly unlocked it, got inside, and locked the door again. There was a golf club, my putter, in the corner. I picked it up, and I slept on a pad in the family room floor, with it in my hand for the rest of the night. The next morning, a dog, who I had rescued from a small pound named Kristen, was waiting for me outside the back door. She had to have climbed a 6-foot chain-link fence to get out of her yard out back. Her yard was by the small building where I had been grabbed during the night. She had seen what had happened to me. She never let anyone get too close to me after that, always slinking in between me and anyone approaching me. She had also seen something else. Whoever attacked me had killed some of the half-grown shepherd mixed pups. Their throats had been slit. I just about died from what had happened to them. I am writing this without letting it register what I am writing because I just can't handle thinking about what happened to them. Their separate yard was away from the building where I was attacked, surrounded by a tall, sturdy wooden wire fence with a gate that took some effort to open. Just getting to them was no easy task. I thought that they would be protected in this location, and I was wrong. I never would have suspected anyone to deliberately do such an evil thing. I had assumed that it was done in retaliation for me having kicked whoever or whatever it was that tried to grab me. Several months later, during the summer, it was 11 p.m. when my dogs out back in the kennel area were all barking again. My parents were home. Dad was in bed, and my mom was watching the 11 o'clock news that had just started. I went out back to see why they were all barking. I was afraid to walk into the kennel area again. So I went under the cottonwood tree on the outside of the kennel area where I had a ladder by the fence. I climbed the ladder to look over the fence into the kennel area. All of a sudden, my lower leg, this time the other leg, was grabbed again by something that felt like a clamp. I immediately thought to myself, it's the same clamp as before. The last thing I remember was being pulled backwards off the ladder. I must have fallen, but I don't remember landing. I was knocked out. I don't know how, whether it was from the fall or something else. When I woke up a half an hour later, I know, because the half-hour 11 o'clock news was just ending when I got back into the house. I was all tied up with orange twine that had previously been on the ground in this area. My upper jean pant leg was torn on the side, and my leg was cut and bleeding. I thought it was strange that my heavy jean pant leg could have been torn like that, wondering if I had been injected with something. I am mentioning it because that was what I thought when I saw it. I could hear rustling somewhere on the other side of the fences, and I was afraid that someone was returning. I managed to stretch the twine so I could get out of it and untie myself. Then I ran into the house. The news was just finishing on the TV, and my mother was half asleep. I dropped to the floor in front of her chair in total hysteria, crying about what had just happened. I don't think my mother totally understood what I was saying because she was half asleep and because I was so upset. I didn't talk about it to my parents after that. I'm not sure why, but I think that I didn't want them to worry about leaving me there alone half of every month when they went up to their other house. I had also had a lot of time since the first time when I was attacked until this time to digest having been attacked. I didn't want to let myself be the victim. I was in attack mode mentally, like a mother bear protecting her cubs. My rescued dog, so I had a lot of adrenaline going through me, and I was in the state of fight or flight for a long time after. I was always thinking that something was going to reach out from underneath something and grab me. Unfortunately, after all these years, and because of the things that had happened to me since that time, I am still in fight or flight mode. I was never afraid to be out there at night until that year when I was attacked twice. The fences around and between the house, outbuildings, yards, and blacktop no longer made me feel safe and secure. Someone or something was able to get over them. Coyotes ran through the property and surrounding properties every night. I could hear them coming for miles. I respect all animals' rights to live and to thrive, but when you hear coyotes coming your way at 3 a.m., it's eerie, especially when you have feral cats and kittens, and especially after I heard coyotes on the kill behind the garage one night, and I had jumped into a vehicle to blare the horn, trying to get them to stop and scare them away. And then I never saw a litter of half-grown kittens again. That I had appointments for the vets to be spayed and neutered. I also think they got my 10-year-old cat, Cedar, who would sneak out during the day and play with the kittens. One day I saw him at 6:30 p.m. watching Mom feeding the dogs, and then when I went back out to get him, he was gone. I never saw him again. I had never heard of the Dogman until I started looking up stuff online 2 years ago, and I had only heard about it but didn't think much about it. A Bigfoot from my mother's friend, who was a newspaper reporter in Eureka, California at the time of the famous Bigfoot sighting of Patty, and she had written articles about it for the newspaper that I had remembered seeing framed and hanging on the wall in the hall of her house when we went to visit. I can still remember the feeling I got in the backyard of her home in the rural area outside of the towns around there. I had a feeling like they were all around. It was the creepiest feeling that I don't remember ever having since my days on the golf course around those wooded hills. I keep thinking that a Dogman ran with the coyotes because of unexplainable things that had happened around there. When I put Dogman in unexplainable as being a possible explanation, the unexplainable becomes explainable. And I keep wondering what that clamp was that grabbed my lower leg both times. Long claws, and if it was a human, why? I have seen a lot of videos about Dogman, Bigfoot, other cryptid-type creatures, and about the world in general during the last 2+ years since my mother had died. After she died, I was alone on the ranch for a year. Dad died in 2001, with not much to do, except take care of feral cats on the ranch. I looked at YouTube a lot before I had unlimited data and spent a lot of money getting more data for my phone so that I could have access to the world through my phone. Then my brothers and I sold the ranch, and I found a house and property about 35 miles south of where I moved. Wouldn't you know, I bought a piece about 6 miles from where the rancher and his crew saw 5 Dogman creatures by the river that runs through his orchard. His crew quit and moved to Nevada. I've heard of that cryptid-type creatures will travel the waterways. There's something about my property that I didn't see online before I bought it. The back property line is bordered by a canal that comes from that river. One night, when a person was helping me move stuff from the ranch to this place, we got here to find the back gate was open, and that knee-high weeds along the outside of the fence had been trampled down like someone had been lying down there. Someone had to have pulled the fence post away and from the latch and locked the gate to have opened it. I can't even budge that fence post, so whoever did it was very strong. That's another reason why the fight or flight response continues. I bought a wrought iron fence and a cyclone fence that are going to be installed in a week or so. In December, I bought a German Shepherd puppy from a company in Kentucky who breeds and trains personal protection dogs. I will get her around December or January, with a fence and then a personal protection dog. I'm hoping to live calmer, no adrenaline life. Whoever or whatever might want to bother me. As the owner of the fence fabrication company said, they can move on down to someone else's place and leave this place alone. Thank you again for helping anyone who has ever had bad experiences by whoever or whatever might have been, to not feel so alone with their memories and those bad experiences. And right there is the whole encounter story. I asked this subscriber if she wanted to remain anonymous, and she said no. And I'd like to thank Faye for coming forth with this story. Definitely a riveting and impactful story. I can see why you'd be in fight and flight mode for a very long time. Like I said, I have my own views on what this could be. I'd like some of my other subscribers to reach out and leave what they think it could be. Faye knows what I think it is because I emailed her my opinion. So guys, please be respectful, and I hope you guys enjoyed this story. Have a good night.